Sophia's heart stopped when she discovered the abandoned mare collapsed in the dirt, its once majestic body now broken and discarded by the man who once called her a champion. As she knelt beside the trembling animal, the mare shifted with a pained groan, revealing the impossible miracle hidden beneath her, a newborn foal, still slick with birth fluids, fighting for its first breath in a world that had already rejected its mother. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The finca of Don Esteban Valverde was a place of opulence, a symbol of the power and wealth he had accumulated over the years. Marble stables, pastures tended like green carpets, and a team of employees dedicated exclusively to the care of his horses formed part of this equestrian empire. Among all the horses, there was one that stood out: Lightning, a jet-black purebred whose bearing was worthy of kings. Her mane waved in the wind like a flag, and her steps on the track were a spectacle that left spectators open-mouthed. Lightning wasn't just a horse. She was Don Esteban's pride. In every race, the millionaire bet not only money but his prestige. The golden trophies that adorned his office were a reflection of Lightning's victories. However, fate had other plans. That day, during an important race, Lightning started as always with strength, precision, and a speed that seemed to defy the wind. Don Esteban watched from the VIP stands with his characteristic gray suit and wide-brimmed hat. "That horse is invincible," he murmured confidently to his guests, who nodded with false smiles. But when the race was about to end, in the last curve, something went wrong. Lightning's left front leg slipped on the wet ground, and her body of almost 500 kilos collapsed in a cloud of dust. The audience fell silent, and the commentators halted their enthusiastic narration. Lightning tried to get up, but a sharp pain made her stumble. The assistants ran towards her while Don Esteban cursed from his seat. Hours later, in the veterinary clinic, the news came that would change everything. The diagnosis was clear. Lightning had suffered a severe tendon injury. With rest and therapy, she could recover enough to lead a normal life, but she would never race again. The news was a blow to Esteban. "How much will the rehabilitation cost?" he asked in a cold tone. "A few months of intensive therapy with specialized equipment and constant care. It won't be cheap, but it's possible," explained the veterinarian. Esteban pressed his lips together. He wasn't a man accustomed to spending money on something that didn't generate profits. For him, a horse incapable of running was like a car without an engine, useless. That same night, while the ranch employees retired to rest, Esteban made his decision. He called two of his most loyal workers, men who knew how to follow orders without asking questions. "I want you to take Lightning far away from here. I don't care where, but I don't want her on my land," he ordered firmly. The men looked at each other uncomfortably but didn't dare to question him. They knew that working for Don Esteban meant obeying without protest. So, after midnight, they drove the truck to the main stable where Lightning was resting. The horse, though exhausted from the pain, raised her head upon hearing the noise of the doors. There was something in her eyes that conveyed a mixture of confusion and sadness, as if she sensed what was to come. The men, unable to look at her directly, led her carefully to the truck. One of them gently stroked her neck before loading her. "Forgive me, friend," he murmured. The journey was long and silent. The truck traveled lonely roads, moving away from the estate and into increasingly inhospitable terrain. Finally, near a stream in the middle of a desolate landscape, they stopped. They unloaded Lightning carefully, but without saying another word. When they started the engine to leave, Lightning tried to follow them, visibly limping, but the effort was futile. The men disappeared into the darkness, leaving the horse alone under a sky covered with clouds. At dawn, the landscape surrounding her was as unfamiliar as it was inhospitable. Lightning dragged herself with effort towards the stream to drink water. Her reflection on the surface returned the image of a horse that was no longer the champion everyone admired. The injured leg hurt with each step, but instinct pushed her to keep moving. There was no food, no shelter, and the only thing accompanying her was the echo of the river. Thus, the majestic purebred horse that had been the pride of a millionaire was reduced to a vulnerable being, abandoned to her fate in a world that seemed to have forgotten her. The sun had barely begun to tinge the hills golden when Sophia, a 19-year-old girl, left her small adobe house located on the edge of a valley. Her home was humble, with worn walls and tile roofs that barely resisted the rains, but it was full of warmth. Despite the difficulties, Sophia always maintained a smile on her face. She had grown up surrounded by animals, and since she was young, her father had taught her that every living being deserved respect and care. Although her father was no longer there, she continued to practice these values every day. That morning, Sophia decided to go to the nearby stream to collect water. Her donkey, Bruno, accompanied her patiently, carrying 2 empty jugs on his sides. Sophia, with her brown hair gathered in a braid and her somewhat worn blue dress, walked barefoot on the dirt path. By her side ran Luna, a mixed-breed dog with large ears and a curious gaze. As she advanced, something caught her attention. In the distance, by the trees that bordered the stream, she spotted a dark figure moving with difficulty. At first, she thought it might be an injured deer, but as she approached, she realized it was a horse. A horse? "What's it doing here alone?" murmured Sophia, stopping a few meters away. The animal was large, of an intense black that stood out even under the dim morning light. Its mane was tangled and its body covered with dust and small wounds. Although its bearing was imposing, it was noticeably exhausted. The horse's left front leg was inflamed, and it visibly limped as it tried to drink water from the stream. Sophia felt a knot in her stomach. She had seen injured horses before, but never one so majestic and in such a deplorable state. She took a step towards it, but the horse suddenly raised its head and stepped back with a weak neigh, as if fearing it would be hurt. "Easy, easy," said Sophia in a soft voice, raising her hands to show she had no bad intentions. "I'm not going to hurt you." Luna, the little dog, went ahead and barked a couple of times, but Sophia stopped her. "Luna, don't scare it," she ordered in a whisper. Sophia stood still, carefully observing the horse. There was something in its gaze that deeply moved her. It wasn't just physical pain, but a kind of sadness that seemed to come from its soul. She decided she couldn't leave it there. "There must be someone who abandoned you. But that doesn't mean your story ends here," she told it, as if the animal could understand her. With slow movements, Sophia took a piece of bread from her bag that she had brought for breakfast. She extended it towards the horse, keeping her distance so as not to frighten it. The animal sniffed the air, hesitating, but hunger finally overcame it. It took a couple of wobbly steps towards her and carefully took the bread. "That's it, boy. You're safe," she said with a gentle smile. Once she managed to get closer, Sophia examined the injured leg. Although she wasn't a veterinarian, she knew enough to notice that the inflammation was serious and that the horse needed urgent help. She looked towards the stream, and then at Bruno, who was patiently waiting with the empty jugs. "It's going to be difficult, but I can't leave you here," she said with determination. Sophia improvised a sort of halter with the rope she had for Bruno, and with much patience, guided the horse away from the stream. The animal limped with each step, but seemed to trust Sophia enough to follow her. The journey back to the ranch was slow. Bruno walked in front with the jugs, while Luna trotted to one side, watching the injured horse. Throughout the journey, Sophia spoke in a low voice, trying to reassure the animal. "I'll call you Lightning," she said suddenly, remembering her father's stories about horses as fast as the wind. "It's a good name, don't you think?" When they arrived at the small ranch, Sophia took Lightning to the improvised stable where she normally kept Bruno. Although the space was small, it was clean and had enough straw for the horse to rest. Bruno, generous as always, gave up his place without complaining, while Sophia brought fresh water and a blanket to cover Lightning. The young woman spent hours caring for the inflamed leg with warm water and herbs she had learned to use from her grandmother. She cleaned the wound with delicacy. The horse neighed softly upon feeling the contact but didn't resist. It seemed to understand that Sophia only wanted to help. "I don't know where you come from, but here nobody is going to abandon you," she told it while stroking its neck. That night, as the moon illuminated the valley, Lightning finally lay down on the straw, exhausted, but with some peace. Sophia, sitting next to it, felt a mixture of sadness and hope. She knew that caring for a horse in these conditions wouldn't be easy, especially with her limited resources, but she couldn't turn her back. "I promise I'll do everything possible for you," she whispered before putting out the oil lamp. As the wind whispered through the trees, Lightning closed its eyes, feeling for the first time in days that it wasn't alone. The days passed slowly in the small ranch, and each one meant a challenge for both Sophia and Lightning. The horse that had arrived weak and fearful began to adapt to the constant care of the young woman. Its leg was still inflamed, and each step it took seemed a reminder of the accident that had changed its destiny. But the peaceful environment and Sophia's affection began to restore something it had lost: hope. Every morning, Sophia woke up before dawn to attend to Lightning. The routine was demanding: clean the wound, apply poultices with herbs she collected from the nearby hills, and make sure it ate enough to regain strength. Resources were scarce, but she always found a way to sustain her animals. "Come on, Lightning. Today is a good day to try walking a bit more," she would say while holding the rope she had converted into an improvised halter. At first, attempts to make the horse move beyond the stable were frustrating. Lightning, although willing, would stop after a few meters, visibly limping, but Sophia didn't give up. Patient, she would speak to it tenderly, stroke it, and encourage it to take one more step. "You know, Dad used to say that horses are like us. They need someone to believe in them so they can overcome fear," she would tell it while guiding it towards the nearby stream. "And I believe in you, Lightning." With time, these short walks began to bear fruit. The inflammation in the leg diminished little by little, and Lightning regained some strength. Although it still limped, there was a different gleam in it, a spark in its eyes that reflected the impact of Sophia's care and affection. One afternoon, while collecting firewood to heat water, Sophia stopped to observe Lightning from a distance. It was next to Luna and Bruno, who seemed to accept it as part of their small family. The young woman couldn't help but smile. Although she knew the road to recovery was long, Lightning's progress was proof that the effort was worth it. However, caring for Lightning wasn't simple. The expenses for food and medication began to weigh on Sophia's pocket. Her only source of income was selling eggs and milk in the town market, and with winter approaching, she knew sales would decrease. "I'm going to need help to get through, but I'm not going to give up on you," she told the horse one night while brushing it with an old wooden comb. Lightning, as if understanding Sophia's words, moved its ears towards her and looked at her with those deep eyes that moved her so much. Sophia let out a little laugh. "Are you telling me you trust me? All right, but I need you to do your part too." The weeks continued, and the bond between them strengthened each day. Sophia talked to Lightning as if it were a close friend, telling it her dreams and concerns. "You know, I've always wanted to have my own animal refuge, a place where no horse, dog, or donkey is rejected. Wouldn't that be nice?" she would say while stroking it under the mane. Lightning would neigh softly, as if responding. One day, during one of their walks to the stream, Sophia encountered Doña Clara, an older woman from the town who usually stopped by the ranch to buy fresh milk. Upon seeing Lightning, Clara was impressed by its bearing, even in its state of recovery. "What a beautiful horse you have, Sophia. Where did you get it?" asked Clara, approaching cautiously. "I found it abandoned near the stream. It was injured, but little by little it's improving," responded Sophia, with a mixture of pride and modesty. Clara observed the horse with attention. "This isn't any ordinary horse. This animal is of fine blood, I'm sure. Look at its body, its muscles, even now that it's thinner. Haven't you thought that it might have belonged to someone important?" The question left Sophia thoughtful. She had never considered that Lightning might be more than an abandoned horse. Its majestic bearing had always seemed special to her, but she never imagined it had a past different from any other injured animal she had rescued. Whoever its former owner was, they left it behind as if it were worth nothing, she said firmly. Now it's here, and that's all that matters. Clara nodded but couldn't help feeling curious. "If you need help with it, let me know. My nephew works in the capital, in a place where they take care of horses like this one. Maybe he can give you some advice." Sophia thanked her for the offer, although inwardly she felt that Lightning no longer needed anything more than her care and affection. For her, the horse wasn't just an animal, it was a reflection of her own struggle to move forward despite difficulties. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees and the stars shone in the sky, Sophia sat next to Lightning, resting her head on its side. "I don't know what your life was like before you came here, but I promise you'll never be alone again," she said in a low voice. The horse, as if understanding, gently inclined its head towards her, closing its eyes with a tranquility it hadn't felt in a long time. In one of the luxurious properties of the magnate Esteban Valverde, a man accustomed to getting what he wanted regardless of the cost, chaos reigned. Esteban, 47, was the owner of a successful chain of real estate and agricultural companies, and his fortune had made him an influential figure in the most exclusive circles of the region. However, behind his elegant facade hid a ruthless man who valued everything only in terms of its utility and benefit. That afternoon, while reviewing some contracts in his spacious office with walls decorated in wood and equestrian trophies, Esteban was interrupted by his foreman, Hernan, a robust man with a serious expression who seemed uncomfortable upon entering. "Mr. Valverde, we have a problem. We haven't found the horse." Esteban dropped the stylographic pen forcefully on the table and looked up, frowning. "What do you mean you haven't found Lightning? What kind of incompetence is this?" "We've searched throughout the surroundings of the estate, sir. The last we know is that after the injury, it escaped towards the forest. We thought it wouldn't survive long in those conditions." Esteban stood up from his chair, his face reddened with anger. "Lightning isn't just any horse, Hernan. It's the most expensive animal I've bought. Do you have any idea what that animal represents to me? My reputation is at stake." Hernan tried to calm the situation. "Sir, it's likely someone found it. We can continue searching in the nearby communities." "Listen to me well, Hernan," Esteban interrupted with a threatening tone. "That horse bears my name and my mark. I won't allow it to end up in the hands of just anyone. Do whatever is necessary to recover it, and if you can't, don't bother coming back." Meanwhile, at Sophia's ranch, the days passed calmly. The young woman continued caring for Lightning with dedication. Although it still limped slightly, the horse showed signs of recovery each day. Its body, previously covered with wounds, now looked stronger and healthier thanks to Sophia's feeding and affection. One afternoon, while returning from walking with Lightning through the valley, Tomas, a neighbor who was passing with his donkey drive, stopped upon seeing the imposing black horse. "Wow, Sophia, where did you get that animal?" he asked with admiration, lowering his hat to look better. "I found it abandoned near the stream. It was in very bad shape, but little by little it has improved," she responded with a mixture of pride and humility. Tomas crossed his arms, carefully observing Lightning. "This isn't just any horse, Sophia. It has the bearing of fine blood. It might be from some important estate. I wouldn't be surprised if someone is looking for it." Sophia felt a chill upon hearing that, but she remained firm. If someone wanted it, they wouldn't have left it in those conditions. For me, Lightning is no longer anyone else's. It's part of my family. Tomas nodded with an understanding smile, but before leaving, he gave her a warning. "Just be careful. The owners of horses like this aren't always kind people." That night, while feeding Lightning and stroking it under the mane, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about Tomas's words. The possibility that someone might come to claim it filled her with unease. "I promised I wouldn't leave you alone, Lightning," she whispered with determination, "and I'll fulfill that no matter what happens." But in the nearby town, Hernan and two of Esteban's helpers had already begun asking questions, with a photograph of Lightning in hand. They traveled the streets looking for information. It didn't take long for them to find someone who had seen a humble young woman walking with a majestic black horse around the valley. "They say she lives in a small ranch near the stream to the south," informed one of the helpers. Hernan nodded with a mixture of relief and tension. He knew that facing Esteban Valverde with the news wouldn't be easy, especially because the businessman never accepted that something he considered his would be in others' hands. "Prepare the horses. Tomorrow morning we'll go to that place," ordered Hernan. That night, as the moon illuminated the ranch, Sophia stroked Lightning without imagining that the horse's past was increasingly close to reaching them. The sun had barely begun to peek over the horizon when Hernan and his men arrived at Sophia's small ranch. The fresh morning air and the tranquil landscape contrasted with the tension that hung in the atmosphere. After several hours of travel, they had found the place thanks to the directions from the neighbors. Although Sophia's ranch was far from the city, its strategic location near the stream and surrounded by mountains made it an ideal place to raise animals. Modest but welcoming, the country house was surrounded by trees that provided shade to the horses and animals in general, the perfect corner for Lightning to recover from its accident. The sound of hooves resonated in the distance, and Sophia, who was in the stable attending to Lightning, raised her head upon hearing the steps of the horses approaching. Her first instinct was to remain calm, but something inside told her this day wouldn't be like the others. When she went outside, she saw three men mounted on well-fed horses, completely different from hers. At their head was Hernan, Esteban Valverde's foreman, a man whom Sophia had heard mentioned many times in town, but had never had the opportunity to meet. Hernan dismounted quickly and approached Sophia with a serious expression. His cold, calculating gaze examined her from head to toe, as if evaluating whether she was worthy of his time. At his side, the two men accompanying him remained silent, observing the scene with apparent disinterest, but without losing sight of Sophia. "Good morning, miss," began Hernan, his voice deep and authoritative. "We're looking for a black horse of fine breed. Have you seen it around here?" Sophia, who didn't know the men or their intentions, tried to stay calm, although a knot began to form in her stomach. "A black horse? Yes, it's possible. I found an injured one near the stream a few days ago. I've been taking care of it, but I don't know anything about fine breeds. I only know it was in bad shape when I found it." Hernan observed her for a moment as if trying to read her mind. Then he let out a sigh of frustration and said firmly, "That horse belongs to my boss, Esteban Valverde. It was on one of his properties but disappeared after suffering an accident. Where is it?" The name of Esteban Valverde made Sophia shudder slightly, though she didn't show it. She knew enough about Esteban to understand he wasn't a man of noble principles. In town, rumors circulated about how he treated his employees and animals, and she never thought someone so cruel could be the owner of an animal as majestic as Lightning. However, she knew she couldn't surrender easily. If it's his, why was it abandoned in the forest, injured and without care? Sophia responded, keeping her gaze fixed on Hernan's eyes. No one who truly loves an animal would leave it in that state. I don't know why he did it, but it doesn't seem fair to me that now they claim it as if it were simple property. Hernan frowned, visibly annoyed by the young woman's firmness. That's not your business. My boss is the owner of that horse, and that means it's under his right. If you found it, you hand it over. It's that simple. Sophia felt her heart beating faster, but she wasn't going to yield. She had cared for Lightning with dedication and affection, and she wasn't going to let them drag it back to a life of neglect. I'm sorry, but the horse isn't leaving here. I found it. I cured it. And now it's part of this place. I'm not handing it over to anyone. Hernan, seeing that the young woman wasn't going to yield, took another step closer. His face hardened by frustration. Don't make me do this harder, Sophia. My boss has many resources and knows how to get what he wants. I don't want us to have to resort to more drastic methods. Hernan's words weren't empty. Sophia could see in his gaze that this man was accustomed to handling situations of force, but she wasn't going to be intimidated. Her response was calm but firm. I'm not going to move from here. If Esteban Valverde really wants Lightning, he'll have to come face me himself. The air was charged with tension. It was then that Lightning made its appearance. The horse, which had been resting near the shed, slowly approached Sophia, as if defending its territory. Although it still limped slightly, its imposing bearing and majestic presence didn't go unnoticed. With its eyes fixed on the men, it approached cautiously but decidedly. This horse has more heart than you believe, murmured Sophia, gently stroking its neck, and I won't allow you to take it. Hernan, seeing the horse's reaction, stopped for a moment, surprised by the connection between Sophia and the animal. However, he quickly regained his composure and took a step back. We'll see it another way. Esteban won't forgive this. This horse belongs to him, and he'll recover it no matter the cost. Sophia looked at him fixedly, not letting herself be intimidated. Well, let him come claim it himself. The men, without saying another word, mounted their horses and began to move away, leaving behind a heavy air of threat. Sophia observed how they moved away along the path, but she didn't relax until they were completely out of sight. Letting out a sigh of relief, Sophia turned towards Lightning, which was now at her side. She stroked it gently without taking her eyes off it. None of this is easy, right? But don't worry, I won't let you go. The horse, as if understanding her words, offered a soft neigh and brought its head closer to her. Sophia smiled, feeling a deep connection with the animal. She knew that what had begun as a simple task of healing an injured horse had now become a fight for its freedom. The air had begun to calm after Hernan's visit and his men, but Sophia couldn't help feeling uneasy. The memories of his words and the latent threat of Esteban Valverde accompanied her during the rest of the day. As she walked alongside Lightning, which now seemed much more relaxed, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about what would come. She knew that confrontation hadn't ended, it had only been postponed. In her small ranch, Sophia continued her routine, but a constant concern had settled in her heart. She knew Esteban Valverde wouldn't stop easily. His money and power made him unstoppable, and if there was something she had learned from her humble life, it was that people like him were never content with less than what they wanted. Lightning's future was at stake, and she couldn't allow it to be snatched away. Meanwhile, in Esteban Valverde's mansion, the atmosphere was completely different. The opulence of his home, with marble columns and ornamental statues, reflected his ego and power. In his office, a crystal lamp illuminated the plans and documents scattered on the table. Esteban, a 47-year-old man with an imposing bearing, was sitting behind his desk looking at a photo of Lightning. "It's absurd," murmured Esteban, passing his hand over his face. "How could I let that happen?" Hernan had returned a few hours earlier with bad news. The search had been unsuccessful, and the young woman who had found the horse didn't seem willing to hand it over. Esteban's frustration increased as he thought about the time and money he had invested in that animal. Lightning had been one of the most promising horses in his stable, a fine breed horse that represented his status to other millionaires and ranchers. He couldn't afford to lose it, not for anything. "What do you want me to do, Hernan?" Esteban asked, looking fixedly at his foreman. "Should we simply go there and take it by force?" Hernan, a man who had been in Esteban's service for years, knew that this type of action wasn't his style. Despite his fearful character, Esteban had always preferred more subtle strategies. "I think we should be more persuasive, sir. The young woman is stubborn, but she can't ignore the law for long, and if she does, there are ways to make her understand." Esteban nodded thoughtfully. "I need this to be solved quickly. I can't waste more time on this matter. If that girl doesn't understand reason, I'll make her understand the hard way." At that moment, an assistant entered the office, interrupting the conversation. "Sir, there's someone at the door who wants to speak with you. He says he's the young woman's lawyer." Esteban frowned. "A lawyer for a girl who lives in a lost ranch? By what right does he think he can come speak to me?" However, an idea crossed Esteban's mind. Perhaps this was an opportunity to resolve the situation in a way that would ensure there would be no more complications. He decided to hear what he had to say. Minutes later, a well-dressed man with a perfectly adjusted tie and a confident attitude entered the room. "Mr. Valverde, I present myself as the lawyer of Sofia Martinez, the young woman who is currently caring for your horse, Lightning." Esteban observed the lawyer with disdain but gestured for him to speak. "What does this girl want now?" "My client, Mr. Valverde, offers you a proposal," began the lawyer with a calm and professional voice. "She is willing to reach an agreement, but she needs guarantees that Lightning will be treated with respect and won't be forced to work in inhumane conditions as occurred on your property." Esteban arched his eyebrow. "She doesn't seek money or compensation. She only wants the horse to be in good hands." Esteban remained silent for a moment, observing the lawyer, considering his words. Meanwhile, he was thinking about what it really meant to lose Lightning. It wasn't just an expensive horse. It was an extension of his image and his power. If the young woman didn't yield, it could become more complicated than it was worth. "Fine, I'll talk to her," Esteban finally said, his tone still authoritative. "But let her know that I won't let her have the last word." Back at Sofia's ranch, the young woman had already begun to doubt if her stance would be enough to face the pressure from Esteban Valverde. Her tranquil and simple life had completely changed in the last few weeks. The concern for Lightning occupied each of her thoughts. However, when she saw Tomas return from the village, an old friend who had accompanied her in her early years, a new idea formed in her mind. "Do you think they can really take it from me?" Sofia asked, her voice trembling. Tomas, who knew her well, looked at her with understanding. "Sofia, you have done a lot for that horse. Don't let anyone make you feel less. If Esteban Valverde comes here, I'll be with you." Sofia smiled, grateful for his support, but she knew the battle wouldn't be easy. If she wanted to save Lightning, she would have to be willing to fight to the end. The tension between Sofia and Esteban Valverde began to increase. Both were willing to do what was necessary to get what they wanted. Sofia was willing to fight for what she considered just, while Esteban saw in the young woman a threat to his authority. Soon the situation would reach its culminating point, but for Sofia, it didn't matter how many men or resources Esteban put at his disposal. Lightning was already part of her life, and nothing and no one could separate them. The day had dawned gray and cloudy, as if presaging the storm that was approaching at Sophia's ranch. The atmosphere was charged with tension. Although little time had passed since Hernan's visit, Sophia felt that the confrontation with Esteban Valverde was inevitable. The threat from his men still lingered in her mind, and the fact that he was willing to go so far for a horse like Lightning made her think that things would get much more difficult. Tomas had been with her all day, helping with the ranch tasks, but he couldn't hide the concern on his face. Sophia, this guy isn't just anyone. He's not going to be content with you telling him you won't hand it over. This matter could get very ugly. Sophia nodded, although her mind was firm. I know, Tomas, but I'm not going to yield. Lightning has been a part of this place since I found it injured, and I'm not going to allow them to take it away. Throughout my life, I've learned not to give up, and I won't do so now. At that moment, the sound of hooves interrupted the conversation. Sophia looked up and saw that a group of horses was approaching rapidly. Esteban Valverde was on his way, accompanied by Hernan and several more men. He wasn't alone. His presence was imposing. His face reflected determination and arrogance. The air became even heavier, as if the storm that was forming was more than meteorological. It was the prelude to a confrontation that would change the destiny of all involved. When he dismounted from his horse, his eyes fixed on Sophia. His cold, calculating gaze showed not a hint of sympathy. "So here you are," he said with a grave voice. "Do you really think you can face me? I am Esteban Valverde, and what I want, I get." Sophia remained firm, although her pulse increased due to the proximity of the man who had threatened her peace. "You're wrong, Esteban. I'm not a woman who yields to threats, and less when it comes to doing what's right. Lightning is here because I cared for it, and I won't allow you to drag it back to that hell from where it came." Esteban frowned but didn't let his anger overflow. Instead, his tone became softer but equally dangerous. "You're playing with fire, Sophia. If you want to keep that horse, what do you think you'll do? Fight against all my power, against everything I represent? The poor don't win battles against the rich. They never have." Sophia, without hesitating, took a step forward. "Perhaps I don't have your money or your properties, Esteban, but I have something much more valuable: respect for what is just. And this horse deserves something better than what you offered it." Esteban's men watched the scene in silence, clearly surprised by Sophia's courage. Hernan, who was at his side, looked at his boss nervously, aware that Sophia wasn't a woman easy to intimidate. However, Esteban didn't seem willing to back down. "You think I care what you think?" he said with a cold smile. "Nothing you have here is enough to face me. If you really believe this is your ground, I'm mistaken. Or perhaps you don't understand the magnitude of what you're provoking." Sophia, despite the pressure, didn't retreat. "I know what I'm provoking. I'm defending what's mine, Esteban, and if you need to use force to take it away, then I'll be ready to defend myself. Lightning isn't just a horse for me, it's a being that deserves freedom, and if you don't see that, that's what makes you truly small." The silence that followed was heavy. Esteban's men looked at their leader, waiting for a sign to act. But Esteban Valverde wasn't accustomed to being challenged so directly. For a moment it seemed he was weighing his options. However, the internal anger grew. He wasn't used to losing, and much less to being defied by a young woman without the resources to face him. "Well," Esteban finally said, his tone of voice now lower but full of threat, "if what you want is a fight, you'll have it. But don't be mistaken, I always win." Sophia, with her gaze fixed on him, responded with a firmness that made Esteban's men, for a moment, doubt. "I'm not looking for a fight, Esteban. I just want you to understand something. The truth will always prevail, no matter how great your fortune or how strong your power. The heart and justice can't be bought." Esteban smiled, but this time his smile didn't have the usual confidence. "We'll see, Sofia. We'll see." At that instant, Esteban's men approached more, some with an air of doubt in their steps, while others awaited orders. Sofia couldn't let Esteban's words go unpunished. She knew this would be a crucial moment for her, for Lightning, and for her life. But something inside told her she wasn't alone in that fight. Although the path would be long and difficult, and although Esteban Valverde had all the power and resources on his side, Sofia was willing to fight to the end, not just for Lightning, but for what it represented: dignity and respect for the lives of animals. The sun began to hide behind the clouds while the confrontation between Sofia and Esteban Valverde reached its culminating point. Sofia's ranch, usually tranquil and peaceful, now felt like the scenario of an imminent war. Around her, Esteban's men remained alert, observing each movement, waiting for their boss to give the order to act. But Sofia didn't seem disturbed. She knew she was fighting for something much greater than her own well-being. Esteban, with a look that reflected the disdain and arrogance that characterized him, took a step forward. "I'm not going to continue wasting my time, Sofia. This is your last opportunity. Do the right thing and hand over the horse without more resistance. If you don't, you'll regret it." Sofia, without taking her eyes off him, took a deep breath. "I won't hand Lightning over to you. I've made a decision, and I'm not going to back down. You're used to getting everything you want with money and power, but you can't buy what you don't understand." Esteban observed her in silence, almost amused by the young woman's tenacity. The fact that someone like her was willing to defy him enraged him, but also awakened something inside him that had been dormant for a long time, a challenge that might not be so easy to overcome. For a moment, he seemed to doubt, but he quickly regained his posture. "If you think you're going to beat me, you're completely wrong. The law is on my side, and I have all the resources to take away what belongs to me," he said, his tone hardened by anger. Sofia raised her head firmly. "Not everything in life is resolved with the law, Esteban. There's something much more important than that. Respect for living beings, for those who don't have a voice. And Lightning has its place here with me." Esteban took a step back, seeing that the young woman wasn't intimidated. He turned to Hernan, his right-hand man, and gave him a subtle signal. Hernan, always willing to do what his boss ordered, took out a pair of written orders from his jacket and extended them before Sofia. "This is what's convenient for you to do, Sofia," said Hernan with a serious look. "If you sign these papers, Lightning will be yours forever. Esteban guarantees there won't be reprisals. You just have to sign." Sofia looked at the papers offered to her but wasn't impressed. She knew that Esteban Valverde's contracts were rarely what they seemed to be. Something inside told her that signature could tie her for life to his influence. "I'm sorry, Hernan. I won't be part of your legal games," responded Sofia, rejecting the offer. The tension increased. Esteban, seeing that his attempts to intimidate Sofia weren't working, took another step closer. "You're right about something, Sofia. Not everything in life is resolved with the law, but I still have my methods." With an imperceptible gesture, Esteban made some of his men approach even closer. Sofia noticed the change in the atmosphere. The threat was no longer just verbal. Esteban was willing to resort to force. "Wait," said Sofia with a voice that had a mixture of calm and determination. "What you're doing is an abuse of power. I won't allow that to happen. Whether by law or by my own courage, I'll fight for what is just." At that moment, the figure of Tomas appeared from the shadows. The young man had been observing from the beginning, and although he didn't have the resources or power of Esteban, his loyalty and courage were unquestionable. "Sofia is right, Esteban," he said with a firm voice. "You can try to intimidate us, but you won't get what you want this way. This isn't your ground, and if you decide to do something, I assure you you'll face more than you expect." Esteban, surprised by Tomas's presence, frowned but didn't react immediately. The young man was nothing more than a peasant without power, without money, but his determination seemed invincible. He was a reminder that even in the face of adversity, there was something that couldn't be bought: the will of a humble people. "This isn't a threat, Esteban," continued Tomas. "It's a warning. If you continue, there will be consequences. Sofia isn't alone, and you won't destroy what we've built with your power games." For a moment, Esteban seemed to doubt. He knew that if he opted for violence, it could be a much bigger problem than he was willing to handle. Despite his wealth, his influence didn't reach everywhere. There were limits to what he could do without attracting the attention of others. However, the arrogance that defined him didn't allow him to back down completely. "Enough," ordered Esteban with a hard voice, looking at his men. "This matter is taking a turn I didn't expect, but let it be clear, Sofia, that the next time you interfere with my plans, there won't be warnings. This isn't a fight you can win." Sofia looked at him without flinching, her heart racing but with an unshakable inner strength. "The fight for lightning has just begun, Esteban. Don't be mistaken. Lightning is more than property to me. It's a life I've saved, and I won't let you destroy it for your ego." With those words, Esteban, knowing he couldn't win today's battle, signaled his men to retreat. Although Sofia's face showed determination, she knew this victory was only temporary. Esteban Valverde wouldn't give up easily, but at that moment, Sofia felt she had taken a crucial step to protect Lightning. The confrontation wasn't over. Esteban, with his wounded pride, had made it clear he wouldn't stop fighting for what he believed belonged to him. But Sofia had also shown she wasn't willing to yield, no matter the cost. The air at the ranch had calmed, but the tension persisted. Esteban Valverde and his men had withdrawn for the moment, but their threat still floated in the atmosphere like a shadow that didn't disappear. Sofia remained in the same place where she had defied Esteban, with her chest agitated by the adrenaline but without showing any sign of weakness. Tomas was at her side, still concerned, but with the hope that the worst had already passed. "You did well, Sofia," said Tomas, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to fall, tinging the sky with warm tones. "But it won't be so easy. Esteban won't let this pass." Sofia nodded, looking at the place where Esteban's entourage had disappeared. Lightning, which had been observing everything from a distance, approached its majestic body to her as if it wanted to give her strength. "I know, Tomas, but I can't turn back. Lightning isn't just a horse, it's a life I've cared for and defended. And although Esteban thinks he can resolve everything with power and money, I won't allow it." Tomas observed her, impressed by the young woman's determination. He knew that although Esteban was a powerful man, Sofia had something he could never buy: the courage to fight for what was right. But Esteban's words continued to resonate in his mind, and the doubt about what would happen in the future didn't stop tormenting him. "What will we do now? We can't stay here waiting for him to return. We need a plan." Sofia sighed deeply and looked at Lightning. It had been a long day, but she knew there was much left to do. Esteban Valverde wouldn't give up, and if there was something she had learned over the years, it was that the threats of powerful men didn't easily dissolve. "The first thing is that we need to ensure Lightning is safe. I have to take it to a safe place where Esteban can't find it so easily," Sofia said with a firm voice. "And then we need to gather allies. We can't face Esteban alone." Tomas frowned. "Allies? Who could help us?" Sofia smiled, although the smile was charged with a sadness she couldn't hide. "There are more people willing to fight for what is just than it seems. Esteban has his money, but we have something he doesn't have: the support of those who know what it is to lose, those who, like me, believe that money isn't everything." With determination, she decided it was time to take the next step. She knew Esteban Valverde would take advantage of any weakness, and although she didn't have the resources of a rich man, she did have something much more valuable: the truth of her cause. Throughout the night, Sofia and Thomas prepared for what could be the final battle. They sought those who could be their allies, farmers, friends, and even people who, like her, understood the value of what truly mattered. It was time to show Esteban Valverde that lightning wasn't alone and that Sofia's cause was stronger than any threat. When morning arrived, Esteban Valverde returned to the ranch, confident that Sofia would yield to his power. He didn't expect that upon crossing the ranch door, he would find something completely different: a multitude of people who, like Sofia, weren't willing to allow such a selfish man to destroy what had cost so much to build. "Sofia," said Esteban with a mocking smile while observing the number of people who had gathered, "did you think you could defy me with these people? They're just peasants. They don't know what it is to fight against someone like me." Sofia approached with firmness, looking Esteban in the eyes. "I may not know how to play your games, Esteban, but I know what it is to fight for what is right, and I won't yield. Lightning is safe here, and I won't allow you to take it." Esteban's face darkened. "We'll see, Sofia. I thought I could be reasonable, but now I see you're just stubborn. You think you can win? This isn't just a confrontation between you and me. It's a war that involves everyone." Sofia looked at him without fear. "It is a war, Esteban. Yes, but it doesn't just involve everyone. It involves those who fight for justice, for life. And as long as you continue believing that money can buy everything, I assure you you're going to lose. And this time, I'm not going to give up." A heavy silence fell over all those present. Esteban's men, who before showed confidence, began to waver upon seeing the unity of the villagers. Although Esteban was powerful, at that moment, Sofia and her community represented something he couldn't control: the collective determination of a people rising for what they considered just. "You've made a mistake, Esteban," said Sofia with a firm and clear voice, "because although you believe that money and power are everything, there's something you can't buy: respect, justice, and the fight for what is right." With those words, Esteban Valverde understood that the battle was lost. The look of those present, the strength of the community, and Sofia's determination had defeated him. Although he retreated, his face reflected a mixture of rage and frustration, knowing that for the first time, someone had managed to beat him at his own game. Lightning, the horse that had been the cause of everything, remained at the ranch where it was finally free from Esteban Valverde's clutches. Sofia had won, but not only because of her courage, but because of the strength of the community that had united in the fight for what was right. The confrontation had ended, but the message was clear: money and power aren't everything, and there will always be those who fight for justice. Sofia had shown that heart and courage can defeat even the most powerful. The passage of years brought peace and prosperity to Sofia's ranch. The small town that had once witnessed oppression and abuses of power now flourished under justice and collective effort. Sofia and Lightning, the horse that was once a victim of Esteban Valverde's greed, had achieved more than anyone had imagined in those dark days. The legacy of that fight, a battle that seemed lost against the force of a rich man, became the story of a town that had learned to unite to defend what was just. Sofia, now an adult woman with a face marked by years of effort, continued to be the heart of the ranch. Lightning was no longer a young horse, but its nobility and strength still inspired all who saw it. At her side, Sofia had created a refuge for animals, caring for and rescuing those that, like Lightning, had been mistreated or abandoned. Not only horses, but also other creatures found in her ranch a safe place full of love. One day, while walking through the field, Sophia stopped in front of the old wooden house that had witnessed so many battles, both emotional and physical. The soft wind moved the branches of the trees, and the sound of the horses in the corral filled her with a deep peace. At her side, Tomas, her faithful companion, approached with a warm smile. Despite the years that had passed, he continued to be her unconditional support. "All this, Sophia," said Tomas, while observing the flourishing ranch, "is thanks to you, to your courage, to your fight. We will never forget what you did." Sophia smiled, but in her eyes there was a mixture of nostalgia and reflection. "What I did wasn't just for me or for Lightning. It was for all of us, for the community, for justice, and above all, for those who don't have a voice." The legacy Sophia had left wasn't only in the prosperity of the ranch, but in the transformation of the town. What was once a place of suffering, where lands and animals were subjected to greed, had become a refuge of hope where people helped each other and fought for a better future. Sophia, with her courage, had changed the course of local history, demonstrating that a single act of courage could have repercussions that would last for generations. In the distance, one could see the field where Lightning peacefully grazed. Although its steps were slower, its gaze continued to be noble and full of determination. Sophia knew that despite the passage of time, it would always be the symbol of her fight. Together, they had shown that not everything is bought with money, and that even in the face of the powerful, heart and integrity could prevail. The memory of Esteban Valverde had disappeared with time. After his defeat and seeing how Sophia and her community prospered, he retired to his own businesses where his name no longer had the same influence. Although many remembered him as an arrogant and cruel man, the story of Sophia and Lightning was the one that endured in the minds and hearts of those who lived in that town. Sophia Valverde, as many began to call her in honor of her courage, had left an indelible mark. With time, Sophia passed the leadership of the ranch to the youngest members of the community. Although she was no longer the young woman who had defied Esteban Valverde in the decisive confrontation, her spirit continued to live in every corner of the place. Tomas had also taken his place as a counselor and mentor, ensuring that the history of struggle and resistance wouldn't be lost with future generations. The ranch, now a symbol of what it meant to fight for what was right, continued to flourish under the leadership of those who understood the importance of justice, solidarity, and respect for animals. Lightning, now old and wise, continued to be the insignia horse, the constant reminder of what had been achieved, the victory of the heart over blind power. Years later, Sophia, now an elderly woman, walked through the ranch with a slow step, but her face reflected a deep peace. She had lived a full life, a life of struggle, love, and justice. While observing the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, she remembered the moment when everything began. She thought about her courage, the strength of the community, and the love for animals that had guided her life. "It has all been worth it," she murmured to herself while stroking Lightning, who at her side seemed to understand each word. Sophia Valverde had left her legacy, and the world, although sometimes cruel, would always remember that the fight for justice doesn't stop, no matter how many years pass. And so Sophia's ranch, along with Lightning, continued to be a beacon of hope, a story that transcended generations, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, courage and justice always prevail. However, the tranquility of the ranch was about to be disturbed once more. One morning, while Sophia was feeding the animals, a luxurious car arrived at the entrance of the property. From it descended a young man, elegantly dressed, with a bearing that reminded her of someone she had faced many years ago. The man approached slowly, observing everything around him with curious eyes. "Good morning," he said with a polite voice. "Are you Sophia Martinez?" Sophia, who no longer had the energy of her youth but maintained the same determination in her gaze, nodded cautiously. "Yes, "That's me." "Who are you?" The young man extended his hand. "My name is Daniel Valverde. I'm Esteban Valverde's grandson." Sofia felt her heart skip a beat upon hearing that name. Despite the years that had passed, the memory of her confrontation with Esteban was still fresh in her memory. She looked at the young man with suspicion, trying to find in his features the arrogance that had characterized his grandfather, but instead, she found a gentle look and a sincere smile. "I've come to talk to you about lightning," Daniel continued, noticing Sofia's concern, "and about something else my grandfather never told anyone." Sofia, intrigued but cautious, invited him to enter the house. Lightning, which was in the nearby corral, raised its head upon hearing the voices, as if it too were curious about this unexpected visitor. Inside the modest home, the years of Sofia's life were displayed in photographs that adorned the walls. Images of lightning throughout the seasons, of animals that had found refuge in her sanctuary, and of the community that had supported her during the most difficult times. Daniel observed everything with respectful curiosity, as if each image told him a story he had been eager to hear. "Would you like some tea?" Sofia asked, her voice carrying the weight of the years, but still maintaining that warm tone that had always characterized her. "Yes, please," Daniel replied, sitting at the wooden table in the center of the kitchen. As Sofia prepared the tea, her hands, now wrinkled and marked by time, moved with the same care she had always shown when tending to her animals. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it was charged with questions that needed answers. "You mentioned lightning," Sofia finally said, placing 2 cups on the table and sitting in front of Daniel. "And something your grandfather never told anyone." Daniel nodded, taking a sip of his tea before speaking. "My grandfather died last month," he began, his voice slightly breaking. "Before he passed away, he gave me a letter and a box containing documents, photographs, and a story I didn't know. A story about lightning and about him." Sofia remained silent, her eyes fixed on the young man, waiting for him to continue. "My grandfather wasn't always the man you face, Sofia," Daniel continued, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Before becoming the ruthless businessman everyone knew, he was a young man with dreams and a deep love for horses. In his letter, he confessed that Lightning wasn't just any horse. She was the daughter of his first mare, Aurora, a gift from his father when he was just a boy." Sofia's eyes widened in surprise. Lightning is the daughter of his first horse. But then why did he abandon her? Daniel's gaze lowered to the cup in his hands. Pride, fear, the pressure of maintaining an image. In his letter, he wrote that the day Lightning was injured in that race, something broke inside him. He had invested everything in her, not just money, but memories, dreams. When the veterinarian told him she would never race again, he felt his past crumbling. Instead of facing the pain, he decided to get rid of it. So he ordered his men to abandon her in the middle of nowhere, Sofia completed, her voice a mixture of indignation and understanding. Yes, but that decision haunted him for the rest of his life, Daniel continued. He never forgave himself for what he did to Lightning, nor for the way he treated you when you protected her. The day you confronted him with all those people, something changed in him. He realized that he had become someone he never wanted to be. Sofia sipped her tea, letting Daniel's words sink in. The image of the arrogant and ruthless Esteban Valverde she had carried for years began to blur slightly, replaced by that of a complex man trapped in his own decisions. In his last years, Daniel continued, my grandfather became a different person. He donated much of his fortune to animal protection organizations, established sanctuaries for abandoned horses, and even funded a veterinary clinic that provides free care to the animals of low-income families. He did all this silently, without seeking recognition. Why are you telling me all this now? Sophia asked, her eyes reflecting a mixture of emotions that were difficult to decipher. Daniel reached into the envelope and pulled out a yellowed photograph. In it, a young Esteban, perhaps no more than 15 years old, smiled alongside a beautiful chestnut mare with a white star on her forehead. Aurora, Lightning's mother. Because before he died, my grandfather asked me to find you and Lightning. He wanted to apologize, but he never had the courage to face you again. He felt he didn't deserve your forgiveness. Sophia took the photograph in her hands, observing the joy in young Esteban's eyes, a joy that had disappeared by the time she met him. There was an innocence there, a purity that life and ambition had gradually erased. "There's something else," Daniel said, taking another document from the envelope. "My grandfather left his entire estate to your animal sanctuary. He wanted Lightning and all the other animals you've rescued to always have a home, and for your work to continue long after." He didn't finish the sentence, but Sophia understood. Long after she was gone. The irony wasn't lost on her. The man who had once tried to take Lightning away from her was now ensuring that her legacy would continue. "I don't know what to say," Sophia murmured, her fingers tracing the outline of young Esteban in the photograph. "You don't have to say anything," Daniel replied with a gentle smile. "But there's one more thing my grandfather wanted you to have." From a small box he had brought with him, Daniel extracted a delicately carved wooden figurine of a horse in full gallop, its lines capturing the essence of movement and freedom. He carved this himself when he was young, inspired by Aurora. He wanted Lightning to have it, a connection to her mother and to the man my grandfather once was. Sophia took the figurine in her hands, feeling its weight and the love that had been poured into each detail. Despite everything that had happened, despite the confrontation and the years of resentment, she couldn't help but feel a sense of closure, of a circle completing itself in ways she never could have imagined. "Would you like to see Lightning?" she asked, standing up. "She's old now, but she still enjoys visitors." Daniel's face lit up. "I'd love to." Together they walked to the corral where Lightning rested under the shade of an old oak tree. The years had turned her coat from jet black to a distinguished gray, and her movements were slower, but her eyes still held that spark of intelligence and spirit that had captivated Sophia from the first day. As they approached, Lightning raised her head, her ears perked forward with interest. Daniel stopped a few meters away, respecting the animal's space and allowing her to decide if she wanted to approach. "She's beautiful," he whispered, genuine admiration in his voice. "Just like in the photographs my grandfather kept." Sophia called to Lightning softly, and the mare approached with slow, measured steps. When she reached them, she extended her muzzle toward Daniel, sniffing him curiously. "I think she knows," Sophia said, watching the interaction. "Animals have a way of sensing connections we can't understand." Daniel reached out cautiously, allowing Lightning to become familiar with his scent. After a moment, the mare pushed her head gently against his palm, a gesture of acceptance that brought tears to the young man's eyes. "My grandfather wrote that he dreamed of this moment," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "Of Lightning finding peace, of being able to approach her without fear or resentment between them." Sophia placed her hand on Lightning's neck, feeling the steady beat of her heart. "Life has a curious way of healing wounds, doesn't it? Your grandfather couldn't be here, but you've brought his heart with you." As the sun began to set over the sanctuary, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Sophia, Daniel, and Lightning remained together, three beings connected by a story of loss, redemption, and the enduring capacity of the heart to find forgiveness, even across the span of years and beyond the veil of death. In the days that followed Daniel's arrival, a subtle transformation began to take place at Sophia's sanctuary. The young Valverde, initially planning to stay only long enough to fulfill his grandfather's last wishes, found himself increasingly drawn to the peaceful rhythm of life there. Each morning, he woke at dawn and joined Sophia in her rounds, feeding the animals, checking on their health, and learning the stories of how each one had come to find refuge in this haven of second chances. "This one is Esperanza," Sophia told him one morning, stroking the neck of an aging donkey with a crooked ear. She was being used to transport illegal goods across the border. When the authorities intercepted the smugglers, no one wanted her. She was malnourished, beaten, and terrified of humans. Daniel knelt beside the donkey, offering her an apple from his palm. Esperanza accepted it cautiously, her large eyes still holding shadows of her past trauma, but also a newfound trust. "How do you do it, Sophia?" Daniel asked, watching as the sanctuary's inhabitants went about their morning routines, horses grazing peacefully, goats playfully butting heads, dogs lounging in patches of sunlight. "How do you give them back their trust after what humans have done to them?" Sophia smiled, the lines around her eyes deepening with wisdom earned through decades of patience and compassion. "It's not about forcing them to trust again. It's about creating a space where they can remember who they truly are, beneath the fear and pain. Animals don't hold grudges the way we do. They live in the present moment. If that moment is safe and filled with kindness, they begin to heal." As the days stretched into weeks, Daniel found himself postponing his return to the city. He called his office, rearranged meetings, and delegated tasks. Something about the sanctuary, about Sophia's unwavering dedication and the animals' resilient spirits, had awakened a longing in him he hadn't known existed. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the horizon in hues of amber and rose, Daniel confessed, "I never understood my grandfather's obsession with horses or why he changed so dramatically in his final years, but being here, seeing what you've built, experiencing this connection with the animals, I'm beginning to understand." Sophia nodded, her gaze fixed on Lightning, who was grazing peacefully in the nearby field. "Your grandfather lost his way, but in the end, he remembered what truly mattered. That's not something many people manage to do." "I've been thinking," Daniel said, his voice tentative yet resolute. "The estate he left for the sanctuary, it's substantial. It could help expand this place, bring in specialized veterinary care, rescue more animals." "We've always managed with what we have," Sophia replied, though there was no dismissal in her tone, only pragmatic acceptance. "But imagine what could be accomplished with proper funding," Daniel continued, his enthusiasm growing. "Modern facilities, educational programs for children, partnerships with universities for research on animal rehabilitation. The sanctuary could become a model for others around the country." Sophia studied the young man beside her, seeing in him not the calculating ambition that had defined his grandfather, but genuine passion and vision. "You sound like you've given this a lot of thought." Daniel smiled sheepishly. "I have. In fact, I've been drawing up preliminary plans. I know I should have consulted you first, but..." "Show me," Sophia interrupted, curiosity brightening her weathered features. Late into the night, they sat at the kitchen table, poring over Daniel's sketches and proposals. What began as casual brainstorming evolved into a concrete plan for the sanctuary's future, a future that, for the first time in years, extended beyond Sophia's own lifetime. "You know," Sophia said as they finally prepared to retire for the night, "Lightning seems to have taken a special liking to you." Daniel's face lit up with boyish pleasure. "Do you think so? I've been bringing her extra apples, but I wasn't sure if she was just tolerating me for the treats." Sophia chuckled. "Lightning isn't one to be bribed. If she comes to you, it's because she wants to. She's always been an excellent judge of character." The following morning brought an unexpected surprise. One of the young volunteers who helped at the sanctuary came running to the house, breathless with excitement. "Sophia, "Daniel, come quickly. Something's happening with Lightning." They rushed to the far pasture where Lightning had taken to spending her mornings. The old mare was lying on her side in the dewy grass, her breathing labored, her flanks heaving rhythmically. "Is she sick?" Daniel asked, alarm edging his voice. Sophia approached slowly, her experienced eyes taking in the scene. "No," she whispered, a smile of wonderment spreading across her face. "She's in labor." "Labor?" Daniel repeated incredulously. "But she's so old, how is that possible?" Sophia knelt beside Lightning, stroking her neck soothingly. "It's rare, but not impossible. The stallion from the neighboring farm must have jumped the fence a few months ago. We noticed he'd been hanging around, but I never thought—" She shook her head in amazement. At her age, the chances were so slim. For the next several hours, they remained with Lightning, offering comfort and assistance as she labored to bring new life into the world. Daniel, initially nervous and unsure, followed Sophia's calm instructions, fetching fresh water, preparing clean blankets, and most importantly, speaking softly to Lightning, reassuring her that she wasn't alone. "Come on, girl," Sophia encouraged as Lightning's contractions intensified. "You can do this. You're strong, just like you've always been." As the afternoon sun began its descent towards the horizon, Lightning gave one final, powerful push, and a small, wet bundle emerged, a foal with spindly legs and a coat that promised to be as dark as its mother's once was. "It's a miracle," Daniel whispered, watching as the newborn struggled to find its footing, collapsing several times before managing to stand on trembling legs. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Life always finds a way. Lightning was abandoned, left to die alone. Now she's giving life, creating a legacy that will continue long after we're gone. The foal, wobbly but determined, took its first tentative steps towards its mother. Lightning, exhausted but alert, nickered softly, encouraging her unexpected gift. When the foal finally reached her, Lightning began to clean it with gentle strokes of her tongue, her maternal instincts overriding her exhaustion. Daniel, overcome with emotion, sat back on his heels. "I never thought I'd witness something like this." "Few people do," Sophia replied, her voice gentle. "This is a sacred moment." As they watched mother and foal bond in the fading light, a sense of profound rightness settled over them. In this simple yet extraordinary event, the circle of Lightning's story had completed itself in the most beautiful way imaginable. Once abandoned and broken, she had now become a creator of new life, a symbol of resilience and hope. "What will you name it?" Daniel asked as the foal nursed for the first time, its tiny tail flicking with contentment. Sophia looked at him thoughtfully, then at the foal that represented so many intertwined destinies, Esteban's regret and redemption, Daniel's newfound purpose, her own lifetime of compassion, and Lightning's indomitable spirit. "Legacy," she said finally. "Its name is Legacy." News of Legacy's birth spread quickly through the surrounding community. People who had known Sophia for years, who had stood by her side during her confrontation with Esteban Valverde decades ago, came to witness what many called the miracle foal. Children pressed their faces against the fence, their eyes wide with wonder, as they watched the small black foal frolic around its aging mother. Even the local veterinarian, a gruff man not given to sentimentality, admitted that Lightning's late-life pregnancy was one of the rarest things he'd seen in his 40 years of practice. "The odds against this are astronomical," he told Sophia and Daniel after examining both mother and foal. "A mare her age shouldn't be able to conceive, let alone carry to term and deliver a healthy foal. Legacy is aptly named. He truly is a legacy in every sense of the word." In the weeks that followed, Daniel postponed his return to the city indefinitely. The business affairs that had once seemed so urgent now felt distant and inconsequential compared to the daily joy of watching Legacy grow stronger. Each morning, he would rise before dawn, eager to see what new milestone the foal had reached overnight. Sophia observed this transformation in Daniel with quiet satisfaction, recognizing in him the same healing that she had witnessed in countless humans who had connected deeply with the animals in her care. One morning, as they sat sharing coffee while watching lightning and legacy in the dewy pasture, Daniel broke their companionable silence. "I've been thinking about my grandfather's letter again," he said, his voice thoughtful. "About how he wrote that his biggest regret was losing touch with what truly mattered to him." Sophia nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I think I was heading down the same path," Daniel admitted. "The family business, the constant pressure to expand and acquire, it was becoming all I thought about. I was turning into the man my grandfather warned me not to become." "But you're not him," Sophia said gently. "You're here, aren't you? You recognized what was happening before it was too late." Daniel smiled, his eyes fixed on Legacy, who was attempting to rear up on his hind legs like a grown horse, only to tumble comically onto his side before bouncing back up again. "Thanks to you, and to Lightning, and now to Legacy. They have a way of showing us what's real," Sophia agreed. "When everything else falls away, money, status, power, what remains is the simple truth of being alive together on this earth, of caring for one another." As summer gave way to autumn, the plans for expanding the sanctuary began to take concrete form. With Daniel's business acumen and Sophia's lifetime of practical experience, they created a vision that honored the sanctuary's humble roots while embracing new possibilities. Local architects volunteered their services to design additional barns and rehabilitation facilities. University students from the veterinary program in the nearest city arranged to complete internships at the sanctuary. A neighboring farmer, moved by Legacy's story, donated 20 additional acres of land to expand the pastures. Throughout it all, Lightning watched over her foal with the attentive care of a mother who understood the preciousness of life. Though her movements were slower than those of younger mares, she never strayed far from Legacy, nickering softly when he ventured too far, teaching him the boundaries of safety with gentle nudges and watchful eyes. One crisp October afternoon, as golden leaves spiraled down from the trees surrounding the sanctuary, Sophia found Daniel sitting alone on a fallen log near the edge of the property. His expression was pensive, almost melancholy, as he gazed out at the rolling hills. "May I join you?" she asked, approaching slowly. Daniel looked up, offering a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Of course." Sophia settled beside him, her joints protesting slightly as she lowered herself onto the rough bark. For a while they simply sat together, listening to the rustling leaves and distant sounds of the animals. "I received a call from the board this morning," Daniel finally said. "They're insisting I return to oversee the merger with Atlantic Capital. It's a deal my grandfather started negotiating before he died." "I see," Sophia replied, her tone neutral, but her heart sinking at the thought of Daniel leaving. In the months since his arrival, he had become an integral part of the sanctuary, bringing fresh energy and ideas that had revitalized both the place and Sophia herself. "If I don't go back, years of work will unravel. Hundreds of jobs could be affected," he continued, tension evident in his voice. "But the thought of returning to that life, of board meetings and profit margins and endless negotiations, it feels hollow now." Sophia placed her weathered hand on his arm. "Life rarely presents us with easy choices, Daniel. Sometimes all paths forward require sacrifice." "What would you do?" he asked, turning to face her fully. "If you were in my position?" Sophia looked out over the sanctuary, at the horses grazing peacefully, at Lightning and Legacy resting beneath an ancient oak, at the dozens of animals who had found safety and love within these fences. "I've only ever known one path," she said honestly. "I can't tell you which choice is right for you, but I can tell you that I've never regretted a single day spent here, even the hardest ones." Daniel nodded slowly, his gaze following hers to where Lightning and Legacy stood. The setting sun gilded their silhouettes, the aging mare and her improbable foal forming a picture of perfect harmony. "I've been wrestling with this decision for days," he admitted, "but watching them just now, I suddenly see it clearly." Before Sophia could ask what he meant, they were interrupted by the arrival of Tomas, now stooped with age but still moving with purpose. "Sophia, Daniel, come quickly." "What's wrong?" Sophia asked, rising to her feet with a speed that belied her years. "Nothing's wrong," Tomas assured them, his face alight with excitement. "It's Legacy. He's running, really running, like his mother used to." They hurried back to the main pasture where a small crowd had gathered at the fence. Legacy, no longer the wobbly newborn but a strong young foal, was racing around the perimeter with an elegance and speed that drew gasps of admiration from the onlookers. His coat gleamed obsidian in the late afternoon light, his mane and tail streaming behind him like banners as he accelerated into a full gallop. Lightning stood at the center of the pasture, her head held high, watching her son discover the joy of speed. There was something in her stance, in the proud arch of her neck and the alertness of her ears, that transported Sophia back through the decades to the day she had first found the injured mare by the stream. "He has her spirit," Daniel murmured, coming to stand beside Sophia. "Her strength and her heart," Sophia added softly. "Most of all, her heart." As they watched Legacy's exuberant display, Daniel's hand found Sophia's, their fingers intertwining in a gesture as natural and right as the bond between the mare and her foal. In that moment, with the golden light of sunset bathing the sanctuary and the sound of Legacy's hoofbeats drumming a rhythm of pure joy, the future seemed to unfold before them with perfect clarity. The seasons turned, painting the sanctuary with the colors of change: winter's pristine white, spring's vibrant green, summer's golden abundance, and autumn's fiery farewell. With each passing month, Legacy grew stronger, his form developing the same elegant lines that had once made his mother the pride of Don Esteban's stables. By his first birthday, he stood nearly as tall as Lightning, his midnight coat gleaming with health, his movements fluid and graceful beyond his years. Daniel never returned to the city, at least not permanently. The morning after Legacy's spectacular run, he had called the board with his decision. He would oversee the merger remotely, traveling when absolutely necessary. But his future lay at the sanctuary. There had been protests, threats, attempted negotiations, but Daniel remained unmoved. Like his grandfather before him, he had found his true calling later in life, and he wasn't willing to lose it again. "They'll eventually replace me," he told Sophia as they walked the perimeter fence on a crisp winter morning, Legacy prancing alongside them in the freshly fallen snow. "The company will survive without another Valverde at the helm, but this," he gestured to the sanctuary, to the animals peacefully going about their day, to Lightning watching over them from her favorite hilltop, "this is irreplaceable." Under their combined leadership, the sanctuary flourished. The expansion plans they had drafted became reality, with new barns rising from the earth, rehabilitation facilities equipped with the latest veterinary technology, and educational programs that brought school children from across the region to learn about animal welfare and conservation. The Sofia Martinez Foundation, funded by Esteban Valverde's estate, provided scholarships for veterinary students specializing in rescue animal care and sponsored research into rehabilitative therapies for abused and neglected animals. As for Legacy, he grew into his name in ways no one could have predicted. His speed and agility became legendary in the region, drawing visitors who marveled at the sight of him racing across the pastures with the wind in his mane. But unlike his mother in her racing days, Legacy's talents were never exploited. Instead, they were channeled into a groundbreaking therapy program for children with physical disabilities, where his gentle temperament and intuitive responsiveness helped young people build confidence and mobility skills. He seems to know exactly what each child needs, one of the physical therapists remarked to Sophia, watching as Legacy patiently adjusted his pace to match a young girl taking her first steps after a serious accident. It's as if he can read their hearts. He comes by it honestly, Sophia replied, her eyes drifting to where lightning grazed peacefully nearby, always keeping her son within sight. His mother has always been a healer of hearts. On the 5th anniversary of Legacy's birth, the sanctuary hosted a celebration that brought together everyone whose lives had been touched by Lightning's remarkable story. Former patients of the therapy program, volunteers who had dedicated countless hours, neighboring farmers who had initially been skeptical but now donated hay and grain, veterinary students who had completed internships, all gathered to honor the unlikely family that had formed around an abandoned mare and the girl who had refused to leave her behind. As twilight descended and lanterns were lit around the main pasture, Sophia found herself standing slightly apart from the festivities, watching as Daniel led a group of children in a gentle game with Legacy. The years had been kind to Daniel. Outdoor work had tanned his skin and strengthened his body, and the corporate tension that had once tightened his features had long since melted away, replaced by laugh lines and an easy smile. "You did well, Sophia," came a familiar voice beside her. Tomas, now using a cane but still possessing the same keen eyes that missed nothing, had joined her in her quiet observation. "We all did," she corrected him gently. "It was never just me." Tomas chuckled. "Always humble. But it was you who found Lightning that day. You who stood against Esteban when no one else would. Everything that followed, all of this, grew from that one act of compassion." Sophia couldn't deny the truth of his words, though she had never sought credit for what she had done. In her mind, she had simply followed her heart, the same way she had taught countless others to do over the years. As the celebration continued into the evening with music and stories shared around bonfires, Sophia slipped away to find Lightning. The old mare, now in the twilight of her years, had retreated to her favorite spot beneath the ancient oak tree, where she could observe the proceedings from a comfortable distance. Sophia settled beside her, stroking the silver mane that had once been as black as midnight. "Who would have thought, old friend?" she murmured, leaning her head against Lightning's warm neck. "That day by the stream, both of us alone and uncertain, and look at us now." Lightning nickered softly, as if in agreement, her wise eyes reflecting the distant firelight. For a moment, Sophia was transported back through the decades, to the frightened, injured mare she had found abandoned, to the fierce battles they had fought together, to the countless lives they had touched along the way. It had never been an easy path, but it had been a true one. The sound of approaching footsteps drew her from her reverie. Daniel was walking toward them, leading Legacy by a loose rope. The young horse's coat seemed to absorb the moonlight, making him appear as if he were carved from living shadow. "I thought you might be here," Daniel said, settling beside Sophia. Legacy was getting restless at the party. "I think he wanted to check on his mother." As if confirming this, Legacy gently nudged Lightning's shoulder before lying down in the soft grass beside her, his large frame curling protectively around his aging dam. The sight of them together, mother and son, past and future, created a tableau of such perfect harmony that Sophia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "Are you all right?" Daniel asked, noticing her emotion. Sophia nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When she finally found her voice, it was steady and clear. "I was just thinking about how life surprises us, how endings become beginnings if we allow them to." Daniel's hand found hers, warm and reassuring in the cool evening air. Like an injured mare becoming a beloved mother, or a corporate executive finding happiness as a sanctuary caretaker. "Exactly like that," Sophia agreed, her smile visible even in the gathering darkness. Life never follows the path we expect, does it? They sat together in companionable silence, watching as both Lightning and Legacy drifted into peaceful sleep, their breathing synchronized in the quiet night. Around them, the sanctuary hummed with the subtle sounds of nocturnal life, the soft hooting of owls, the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush, the distant murmur of voices from the celebration. In that moment, Sophia felt the full circle of her life complete itself. From the young girl who had found an abandoned mare by a stream to the woman who had created a haven for the forgotten and broken, her journey had been guided by a simple truth: that compassion, once offered freely, returns multiplied beyond measure. Lightning had been her first rescue, but through Legacy and the sanctuary, that single act of kindness would continue to ripple outward, touching lives long after both of them were gone. "What are you thinking now?" Daniel asked softly, seeing the peaceful expression that had settled on her face. Sophia gazed at the sleeping horses, at the sanctuary stretching out around them, at the stars emerging one by one in the darkening sky. "That nothing truly valuable is ever lost," she said. "It just changes form, like Lightning's spirit living on in Legacy, or your grandfather's redemption finding shape in your choices." As the night deepened around them, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that some bonds transcend understanding: the connection between a girl and a broken mare, between mother and son, between past wounds and future healing. In the end, it was these bonds that truly mattered, weaving together to create a tapestry of meaning that would endure long after individual threads had faded. And in the soft darkness beneath the ancient oak, surrounded by the legacy of a lifetime of compassion, Sophia found the rarest gift of all: the knowledge that what she had built would continue to grow and flourish, offering shelter to the abandoned, hope to the broken, and love to all who entered its gates.